The presidential palace in Ouagadougou was drenched in thick shadows despite the midday sun outside. Heavy velvet curtains had been drawn to stifle the heat and the prying eyes of foreign drones. Inside the war room, President Ibrahim Traoré stood before a vast digital map glowing red with alerts and enemy positions. Around him were his top generals, intelligence heads, and a few trusted political allies. The tension was like a taut rope ready to snap. France is not just watching, Traoré said, his voice low, controlled, yet filled with fire. They are coordinating, financing, manipulating. This war is not just against rebels in the Sahel. It's against colonial ghosts in modern suits. General Bakary Sankara shifted in his seat. Sir, are we certain this isn't just disinformation? France denies involvement. The UN remains silent. Of course they deny it. Traoré snapped. He turned, pointing at the flickering map. 3 attacks, coordinated within the same hour. Rebels with European-grade weaponry, drones, Israeli tech, but filtered through French intermediaries. Do you really think Tuareg raiders have that kind of access? No one replied. The room thickened with unspoken truths. France had long kept its hands in Burkina Faso's affairs, quietly backing opposition forces, turning tribal divisions into political weapons, embedding agents in civilian groups. But Traoré had risen from the people, forged in the fires of revolution, and he saw through the colonial smokescreen. We must go public, he said. Not with whispers, not with subtlety. I want a declaration, tonight, in front of the world. We will name them, expose them, and if they move against us, we strike first. Gasps filled the room. Colonel Diouda Ouattara, head of internal security, stepped forward. You understand what you're saying, President, declaring war, political, economic, digital, on a Western power. They will isolate us, sanction us, starve us. Traoré smiled, that same defiant grin he wore when he took power in a bloodless coup. Then let them. We will not bend, not again. The age of their empire is dead. We're just dragging the corpse into the light. Later that night, the broadcast shook the world. Ibrahim Traoré, in full military uniform, stood beneath the national flag, flanked by the carved eagle of the Burkina crest. His voice, steady and forceful, echoed through radios, televisions, and live streams across the globe. To the people of Burkina Faso, to Africa, and to the conscience of the world, I speak not with malice but with truth. Our land bleeds not from war alone but from decades of manipulation. France, cloaked in diplomacy, continues to sow instability through proxies and puppets. No more. The camera zoomed in slightly, catching the flash in his eyes. From this moment, we consider any foreign-backed interference a declaration of war. We will respond with force. We are done being pawns. In Paris, the Élysée Palace erupted into chaos. President Valérie Morin had just returned from a NATO summit and was handed a red folder within seconds of stepping off her motorcade. Inside, full transcript, satellite intercepts, social media firestorms. Her aides were pale. How much of this is true? She barked. Her intelligence chief hesitated, enough to worry us. Our agents confirm French arms found in rebel caches, disavowed supply lines, private firms operating out of Chad and Niger. Too close for coincidence. Morin clenched her jaw. Get me the defense minister and shut down Operation Lies immediately. If this goes further, we'll have war in West Africa and the whole damn world will know we started it. But it was too late. Traoré had lit a fire that could not be contained. Across Burkina Faso, thousands poured into the streets, chanting his name, waving anti-French banners, setting fire to European embassies. In Mali, Niger, even Cameroon, support swelled. The anti-colonial wave was now an inferno. Inside a smoky backroom in Dakar, a French operative named Julien Marceau slammed his fist on a table. I told them Traoré's not like the others. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't play their game. His partner, H.O.N.D.R., a Senegalese-French liaison, glanced over a set of coded communications. Worse, he's rallying the others. Guinea's president just released a similar statement. They're forming a bloc, Pan-African Resistance Coalition. If they align militarily, France won't be terrified. It'll be drowning. Julien lit a cigarette, ignoring the no-smoking sign above him. Then we find the cracks. Every movement has them. Traitors, idealists, greedy bastards who still want a French passport and a Swiss bank account. Let's peel this revolution from the inside. Back in Ouagadougou, Traore was not resting. He met secretly with heads of state from Mali and Niger under cover of night. The location, a desert compound guarded by sandstorm and shadows. There, they signed a pact, the New Sahel Defense League. Mutual aid, joint military exercises, shared intelligence, a formal break from ECOWAS from France and from any state that stood in their way. We will not survive as lone wolves, said President Abdoulaye Maga of Mali, but as lions hunting in a pack. And if France sends its wolves, asked Mohamed Bazoum's proxy from Niger. Traore simply placed a black folder on the table, inside names, dates, satellite images. Then we exposed the jackals hiding behind them. Unbeknownst to them, someone at that meeting had already been bought. One of the translators, a dual citizen, had been contacted weeks ago by French intelligence. A microphone hidden inside the hem of her hijab captured every word. The recording reached Paris within hours. By dawn, France's defense ministry had activated dormant contingency plans. Cyber units began disabling West African comms networks. Propaganda campaigns flooded social media. Rumors of internal splits in the Sahel League, false reports of Traore's assassination, AI-generated footage of civil war. But Traore had anticipated this. As Wi-Fi blacked out across cities, trucks rolled out carrying Starlink-like terminals, acquired through discreet Chinese channels. National radio stations began operating on analog frequencies, impossible to jam. Messages scrolled across screens: do not believe their lies, stand tall, Africa rises. In the presidential command center, Traore stared at a screen displaying a red pulse. Paris, they will come, he said to General Sankara. And when they do, we won't just fight back. We will make them regret ever setting foot on African soil. But as he turned away, unaware, a silent alert pinged on an underground server. A line had been crossed. A kill order had been authorized, and it had his name on it. The air inside the presidential convoy was still and thick with static. Ibrahim Traoré sat in silence as the armored Mercedes snaked its way through the darkened streets of Ouagadougou. Outside, thousands lined the roads, chanting his name, fists raised, candles burning in a quiet declaration of solidarity. He could hear the distant thrum of drums, the heart of a people no longer afraid. But inside the vehicle, he wasn't celebrating. He was thinking, calculating, we need to change the codes. Traore said suddenly. Colonel Ouattara, riding shotgun, turned slightly. Sir, every security protocol, our airbase encryption, satellite comms, bunker access, everything, someone sold us out at the summit. France knew too much, too fast. Already in motion, Ouattara replied, tapping on his secure tablet. We're also rotating the presidential guard. Anyone with even indirect foreign contact is off the list. Traore nodded, but his eyes were sharp. Loyalty is proven in chaos, not paperwork. I want background checks redone manually, through tribal networks, not the bureaucrats. The convoy turned into the secure military complex known only as Zone Zero. Underground, deep beneath reinforced concrete and layers of encryption, lay the central command of the New Sahel Defense League. In the war room, the atmosphere was heavier than ever. Screens flashed updated intel, French naval activity off the coast of Ivory Coast, U.S. silence, Russian curiosity, China watching. The board was full and the pieces were moving. We received a transmission from the CIA, said Lieutenant Farida Kabor, voice brittle with caution. They say they're neutral, but they're offering monitoring support. Monitoring support. Traore repeated, the phrase venom on his tongue. So they can decide who wins and back the survivor. No, tell them this isn't a proxy war, this is a burial. At that moment, the doors to the chamber swung open and a breathless officer burst in, face pale with urgency. Sir, we intercepted an assassination directive, French DGC, codenamed Operation Silencieux. The target is you. The room froze, even the humming servers seemed to still for a moment. Then General Sankara exploded. When was this authorized? "24 hours ago," the officer replied. "The directive passed through a secure relay in Algeria disguised as a diplomatic cable. We're still tracing the operative, but he's already here." Traore didn't flinch. "Good, let them come. Let them find me prepared." "No, sir," Ouattara cut in. "This is different. We need to move you to Shadow Bunker 3 off grid. No one outside this room knows about it." But Traore raised a hand. "No, if I vanish, the people panic. France wins. I won't run." Farida stepped forward, her voice low. "Sir, this isn't about pride. It's about survival. If they kill you now, this revolution dies in silence." He looked at her, then at the others. "Then we turn the hunt around. I want the assassin found alive." Meanwhile, across the city, in an upscale hotel that catered to foreign diplomats and aid workers, the man known only as Agent Cormier watched the news from his room, the lights off, a suppressed FN-57 pistol resting beside his laptop. He had arrived 2 days ago under the cover of a Belgian UN logistics officer, complete with forged paperwork and a carefully constructed humanitarian backstory. He watched Traore's speech again on replay, the man's conviction burning through every word. A part of him deep inside respected the young revolutionary, but orders were orders. He glanced at the mission packet: infiltration, confirmation, elimination, clean exit, all assets in place. He stood, opening the briefcase to reveal a surgically precise set of tools: modified biometric disruptors, facial reconfiguration gel, silenced drone kit, and a neurotox, in no larger than a drop of ink. Death would come quietly, like smoke. But what Cormier didn't know was that his hotel room had been under surveillance since the moment he powered his laptop. A team of elite cyber warriors, trained in China, loyal to Traore, had tagged his IP and traced the malware he tried to plant into Burkina Faso's comm grid. He was already marked, and his location had just been pinged to Unit Legion Noir, an underground counterintelligence cell led by Captain Nage Diallo, a ghost in the intelligence community, a woman whose name wasn't even known to most within Traore's own cabinet. "Do not engage inside the hotel," Diallo instructed her team via secure comms. "We want him scared, then caught. Leave a note on his pillow, one word, watched, then vanish." Just before dawn, Cormier awoke with a jolt. Something felt off. He scanned the room, nothing touched, nothing moved. Then he saw the small folded paper resting gently on the pillow beside him, watched. His blood ran cold. Back in Paris, panic had begun to fester beneath the marble walls of the Élysée. Intelligence leaks were spreading. French operatives had gone dark in 3 regions. The media, though muzzled, was starting to ask questions. Protesters gathered outside embassies in Senegal, Benin, and Gabon, waving the same symbol, a black star over a clenched fist. Traore's revolution had become a virus, and it was spreading. Valerie Morin convened an emergency summit, not NATO, not EU, something quieter. In a soundproof chamber beneath the Ministry of Defense, she met with private contractors, disavowed military commanders, and former intelligence heads. "Burkina Faso must be neutralized," she said, "if not with weapons, then with doubt. We need to fracture their unity, sow mistrust, paint Traore as corrupt, as unstable, use his past." "What past?" one of the contractors asked. "He was a soldier, clean record." Morin leaned forward. "Everyone has shadows. Find his." But shadows work both ways. In Burkina Faso, Traore summoned a secret figure to the palace. Someone even his generals didn't know about, Amara Keita, a rogue ex-DGSC agent who had defected years ago. She had disappeared into the jungles of Liberia, operating as a ghost for hire. Now she emerged. "I told myself I'd never work for a flag again," she said, stepping into the low-lit room. "You're not," Traore replied. "You're working against one." She smiled. "Better. What do you want?" "I want to bring down the French house of cards, not just their networks in Africa. I want to expose their backroom deals, their black budgets, their regime change playbook. I want them naked before the world." Keita nodded. "Then you'll need the Zurich archive." Traore's eyes narrowed. "That's a myth." "No," she said, "it's real and it holds everything." What neither of them realized was that the archive wasn't unguarded. A shadow group within France, Sorderblanc, was already moving to destroy it. They weren't part of the government. They were older, deeper, the ones who pulled even Paris's strings, and they had just activated their last resort. They called it Eclipse, a kill protocol not aimed at Traore but at his revolution's soul. The plan: forge documents, fake audio, create a scandal involving child soldiers under Traore's command, leak it, amplify it, turn his people against him. The story would break in 48 hours, and the countdown had already begun. The sun rose over Ouagadougou, but the city felt colder than usual. Streets once pulsing with revolutionary energy were now dotted with anxious faces, silent radios, and flickering televisions. Rumors spread like a plague. Whispers of betrayal, photos circulating in underground forums. Grainy, edited images of child soldiers holding rifles beside the national flag. Worse still, a heavily manipulated audio clip that seemed to feature Traore's voice laughing about sacrifices for power. Within hours, international news outlets picked up the story: CNN, Al Jazeera, Le Monde, and then social media flooded with hashtags: #Traore the Tyrant, #Burkina Crisis, #Children of War. Inside the war bunker, Traore stared at the screen as the footage looped. His generals stood tense, expressions unreadable. No one dared speak first. "It's a fake," Farida finally said, stepping forward. Voice print analysis shows irregularities, pitch modulation, timeline splicing, but it's clean. Deepfake level 9, AI enhanced. This wasn't done in a garage, it came from a state lab. France, asked General Sankara. Traore's jaw tightened. No, not just France. This is order blanc. A hush fell. "You're saying the myth is real?" Ouattara asked. "That they actually exist?" "They do," said Amaraketa, emerging from the shadows of the war room. "And I should know. I was one of their tools before I ran." She tossed a black USB drive on the table. "The Zurich archive is gone. They burned it. Every hard copy, every backup. But I managed to lift this before they hit the servers." Traore plugged it in. What appeared on screen were schematics, memos, recordings, proof of a covert French Pan-African strategy. Project Le Renard Noir. Target nations: Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. Objective: undermine sovereignty, fracture coalitions, and maintain economic dependence via puppet regimes. One line caught everyone's breath. Primary deterrent to destabilization efforts: Ibrahim Traoré must be neutralized through reputation assassination. Secondary options include direct termination. Silence fell like a bomb. But Traore's expression didn't flicker. He stood facing the generals. "This is no longer a war of bullets. It is a war of truth." He turned to Farida. "Leak the archive, all of it, in full, unedited, no redactions. Let the world see the monster behind the mask." Farida hesitated. "Sir, if we go nuclear, they'll hit back. Hard, financial blacklists, military embargoes, false flag operations, possibly NATO-level interference." "I'm aware," he said, "but fear is the tool of the colonizer, not the resistance." At the same time in Paris, the Élysée was in chaos. Valérie Morin slammed her fist against the Situation Room table. How the hell did they get the Zurich files? One of her aides, sweating, stammered it. "It must have been Keita. She was reported in Lagos 2 days ago, now gone. She's a ghost, ma'am." Morin's eyes were full of fury. "We underestimated him. We thought he was just a populist with a rifle and a slogan, but he has the will of a continent and ghosts on his side." A shadowy figure sitting in the corner, a man only known as Marshal Blanc, a veteran of French intelligence so buried he didn't officially exist, finally spoke. "Traore must be made to disappear, not just physically. He must be erased from history, invalidated, discredited beyond recovery." "How?" Morin snapped. "We've already used the child soldier narrative, and they're punching back with truth. We turn truth into noise," he said coolly. "We flood the net with conflicting leaks. Fake whistleblowers, contradictory documents, images that prove and disprove everything. The public doesn't need the truth, just confusion. And if that fails," the Marshal's lips curled, "then we burn it all." Back in Burkina Faso, the counter-offensive had begun. Online forums, once dominated by anti-Traore or propaganda, were now riddled with questions. Why would Traore fight France only to use child soldiers when he'd outlawed underage enlistment last year? Why was his voice in the tape not matching emotional tone maps of his previous interviews? Then, an unexpected ally joined the fray. Edward Makamba, the controversial Kenyan whistleblower who had exposed U.S. backed drone operations in Somalia. He tweeted, "Just ran audio forensics on the so-called Traore scandal. Obvious deepfake, and the editing watermark came from a CIA-aligned Israeli firm. So, who's really behind this?" That tweet got 12 million views in 6 hours. More followed. Then came an even greater blow to France. A leaked diplomatic memo from a disgruntled French ambassador in Togo, revealing that Paris had authorized secret bribes to Burkina opposition leaders. Names were named, amounts were listed, signatures were clear. Within minutes, protests exploded outside the French embassy in Ouagadougou. This time they weren't just loud, they were organized. Chant leaders read sections of the Zurich archive aloud through megaphones. Priests, imams, and village chiefs marched side by side. One elderly woman, draped in the Burkina flag, stood before the embassy gates and shouted, "You lied to us for 100 years, but we remember now, and we will never forget again." Inside the war room, Farida looked up from her screen. "We're not just fighting France anymore," she said. "We're fighting the idea of France." And that's when the power cut out. Emergency lights flickered on, alarms beeped, servers rebooted. A voice came through the emergency comms. "This is General McCain of the 5th Armored Division. We're under cyber attack. Satellite feeds jammed, drones grounded. Someone's trying to blind us." Amare cursed. "They're moving now. Chaos doctrine, blind the enemy, strike at the head." Ouattara looked at Traore. "We have to relocate now." But Traore raised a hand. "No, let them come. This is the final play." He turned to Amara. "Activate Code Echo." Her eyes widened. "You're serious? Do it." Code Echo was the final contingency, a decentralized network of autonomous rebel militias, tribal leaders, hackers, and foreign sympathizers. Trained for months in secret, each cell unaware of the others, their purpose to continue the revolution if Traore was taken or killed. Amara opened a secure channel. All over Burkina Faso, encrypted signals were received. Hidden radios crackled to life. In villages, small arms caches were unburied. In city slums, graffiti turned to coded messages. Farmers stopped tilling. Students stopped studying. All turned to resist. And then, a drone buzzed low over the palace. It wasn't one of theirs. Hostile UAV, 500 meters and closing. Traore remained still. "Let it." Farida lunged for him. "Sir." But the drone didn't fire. Instead, it projected a hologram, a 3D image of Valerie Morin, transmitted in real time. "President Traore," her voice echoed, "this is your last warning. Surrender your government, disband your militias, or Burkina Faso will burn and your people will curse your name." Traore stood alone in the drone's light, unflinching. "My people know who their enemy is now," he replied, "and they are not afraid of fire anymore." The drone blinked once, and self-destructed midair. Shrapnel rained on the rooftop, but Traore didn't move. Suddenly, a side door to the war room burst open. It was Diallo. She was bleeding. "We found him," she gasped. The French assassin. He broke protocol, tried to detonate a bioweapon in the financial district. I stopped him, but I couldn't stop what he said. Traore stepped toward her. "What did he say?" She looked him dead in the eye. "He said this isn't about you anymore. They're not after your country. They're after the idea of liberation everywhere." And then she collapsed. As medics rushed in, Traore whispered to himself, "They want to kill a dream." He looked at his generals. "Then we must become the nightmare they can't silence." Farida received another ping. "Sir." She stared at the screen, then turned to him slowly. "You're not going to believe this." "What?" She turned the tablet around. On it was a live feed from Paris. Protests, massive ones. Black-clad French youth marching through the streets with signs reading, "We are all Burkina Faso. Down with empire." Traore is right. Traore's mouth parted. He looked at the room, then at the sky through the reinforced glass. "They tried to bury us," he whispered, "but they didn't know we were seeds." A midnight storm rolled over Ouagadougou, thunder cracking like cannon fire. as if nature itself mirrored fury brewing within the Republic. In the deep underground corridors of the Resistance Command, Ibrahim Traoré paced before a holographic war map. Red dots bled across Burkina Faso covert sabotage attempts, drone breaches, proxy insurgencies, but what chilled him most wasn't on the map. It was in his hand, a simple, unmarked envelope dropped by an anonymous courier outside the gates of the People's Assembly. Inside it, one photograph, him dead. His face blasted open, surrounded by rubble and ash. The image was detailed, not crude. It was prophetic. "This is psychological warfare," Farid muttered. "They're trying to break your mind. Predictive fear tactics, AI-enhanced visualizations, digital voodoo." "No," Amara Keita said gravely. "This is a warning from Order Blanc." "They never bluff." Traoré tossed the photo onto the table, then let them try. He turned toward his commanders. "We counter every move. They fund a proxy army. We expose the receipts. They sabotage infrastructure. We rebuild faster. They assassinate my generals." Then every Burkinabe becomes a general. The room echoed with agreement, but beneath it, a pulse of dread throbbed in every chest. An hour later, a coded message came from Dakar. The African Coalition for Sovereignty, a secret alliance Traoré had been cultivating, had just intercepted a satellite ping from the French military intelligence network. It contained a brief but chilling directive. Phase 3 authorized. Neutralize symbol, a not target, not president, symbol. France no longer saw Traoré as a man. He was now a myth, and myths, they feared, lived longer than kings. Farida's voice trembled. "They're sending in Lucien Valmont." Everyone froze. The name was legend, a French assassin with no official rank, operating outside command, protected by diplomatic ghosts, known in Africa only as Le Tisseur, the Weaver, not because he killed noiselessly, but because he unwound entire movements. One man, one bullet, one collapse. "He's already here," Amara whispered. "I feel it." Later that night, presidential quarters went dark, security cameras looped, comms went silent, and then, a soft hiss from the ventilation shaft, a hand emerged, gloved, glinting with synthetic fiber, then boots, a man in a matte, black exosuit, face covered in an optic-adaptive mask. Silent, efficient, he moved like smoke, bypassing lasers and magnetic triggers as if he'd built them himself. Lucien Valmont. He made it to the central hallway, 200 feet from Traoré's bedroom, then the alarm tripped. A single flashbang exploded from the ceiling, loud enough to rupture eardrums but calibrated not to damage structures, and as Lucien reeled, gun rising, a figure stepped out from behind a retracting wall. Amara Keita, face emotionless, blade in hand. "You thought we wouldn't be ready." Lucien smiled beneath the mask. "You were always the soft one." Amara didn't reply. They clashed, steel on steel, silence on fury. The hallway lit with electric shocks, kinetic sparks, pulse, knives flashing in the dark, and then a shot rang out. Lucien staggered. Traoré stood behind him, smoking, pistol in hand. Lucien fell, gasping, chuckling even in death. "You can't kill." "An idea," he whispered. Traoré knelt. "That's what we've been telling you." The French assassin exhaled his last. By morning, the story hit every major outlet. French operative killed inside Burkina Faso presidential compound. France denied everything, but the damage was done. African leaders began defecting from French influence. Senegal announced full military independence. Mali offered to host a Pan-African Security Council. Even the IMF called for a re-evaluation of post-colonial economic frameworks. And on the streets of Paris, things had reached boiling point. Students, labor unions, even retired military officers marched in the millions. Chants filled the city. "No more shadow wars. Colonialism is terrorism. G suis Burkina Faso." President Morin called for a national curfew. The military refused to enforce it. On live television, she appeared rattled, hair unkempt, eyes sunken. "We must not let populism destroy centuries of French leadership," she stammered. Her words were drowned out by the sound of people banging pots and pans across the nation. Inside her palace, the Marechal Blanc watched her unravel. "She is no longer useful." He muttered into a secure phone, "Activate Protocol Danton." Across Burkina Faso, Traoré received word that France had launched Operation Mirage, a last-ditch disinformation blitz and Drones swarmed to destabilize the capital, crash the banks, and collapse the regime. But this time the world watched, and the world had changed. Anonymous hackers from Argentina to Ghana began striking French servers. Leaks exploded, secret trade deals, arms contracts, backroom political manipulations. Even whistleblowers inside NATO began confessing complicity in decades of African exploitation. The myth of French benevolence collapsed, and Traore, he walked alone into the center of Ouagadougou Square. Unarmed, no armor, surrounded by his people, a drone hovered overhead. Everyone froze, then the drone spoke, a woman's voice. "This is France, final warning. Step down or we will fire." Traore looked up, smiled. "No," he said, loud enough for every mic, every camera, every citizen. "You step down." And then something happened no one expected. The drone spun midair, turned away, and dropped. Slowly, harmlessly, disarmed. Farida gasped. It defected. Traore didn't smile. He simply turned and walked away into the crowd. No guards, no protocol, just a man, a myth, a symbol. In Paris, President Morin vanished the next morning. Some say she fled to Canada. Others say the Merkel took care of loose ends. But one message appeared on her official Twitter account before it was deleted. They thought they were fighting a man, but they were fighting history, and history does not lose.